Okay.
Good morning, Z Horde. How's it going this Freaky Friday? Welcome to the Morning Horde Rush. I'm your host, Steve Stockton. How's everybody doing today? Look through the chat here and see who we got. Got a lot of people on this Friday morning here. Let's see. We've got Corona Fox, Mia. Sean G, Chasing the Truth. Glad to have you in the house. 13 past midnight. Hey, that's me. I'm in the chat. Pumpkin Queen, glad you could make it. She's still in the south of France, coming all the way here to check us out. We got Cisco Lady Liberty in the house. Cisco's an awesome person. She's great author that I actually co-authored a book with. She's got a podcast called Journey Through the Gate, Paranormal Podcast. Super Queen Dragon Ketchner, how you doing this morning, girl? I want to send you a big virtual hug over the airwaves here. Glad to have you with us. See who has Demented Maniacs in his house. Glad to see you here this morning. As always, got some of the best mods in the business here. Mystery After Death Paranormal, good morning. And also noticed we've got Paranormal Heart podcast in the chat. Actually, that's my guest for today, Kat Ward, who does the Paranormal Heart podcast. Bring her on here in just a little bit. Let's see what's going on. How's everybody doing today? Having fine weather where you're at. It's a little chilly here in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. Fall is in the air. Only 69 days till Halloween. It's coming. It's not going to be long. That'll be here before you know it. And just want to mention, not saying anything in particular, but that happens to be my birthday, October 31st. If you're wondering what you can get me, check out those fine mugs from Dezombified that we'll have up here later. So we get a little plug in there for the merchandise. Hey, that's what keeps the show going. Either way, we appreciate your support. Glad everybody's here. Okay, looks like I've got the chat caught up now with the shout outs. I'm going to go ahead and bring my guest on, if that's okay. So, Kat Ward of Paranormal Heart podcast. come on in and say hi to the Z Horde.
Hello, hello.
Can everybody hear Kat okay? There's a delay here, and I like to make sure that we're going out live. Let us know if you can hear us.
Make sure my mic's working.
And as soon as we get confirmation from the chat, I'll introduce you to Kat here. Everybody's still talking about Halloween. October's only 38 days away. Hey, there's Nina Love in the house. And Mia Mina says that's her husband's birthday, too. It's a great day to have a birthday. Okay, they can hear us. All right.
Okay,
well, again,
cool.
Welcome, Kat Ward. She's a Canadian paranormal investigator and host of Paranormal Podcast. How are you doing today, Kat?
I'm doing great. How are you all doing?
Doing great. Glad to have you here. Looks like everybody in the chat's going in. Patrona Fox says that she loves you. And I know that Sean G was talking about you earlier. He said you're a great friend. So tell us about your podcast, what inspired you, and what motivates you and keeps you going.
Well, my podcast is called Paranormal Heart, and it comes out the last Sunday of every month. There's a new episode at 6 p.m. Eastern the last Sunday of every month. And you can find it on Podbean. I have a YouTube channel. I'm on iamdarkwaters.com on the last Sunday of the month, every Sunday of the month at 6 p.m. Eastern. I'm on Spotify, iTunes, pretty much everywhere you can find podcasts. And I started out as a paranormal investigator, but what started me on this podcast thing was there's so many people out there who have paranormal experiences, and it can be very traumatizing, and they don't want to talk to anybody about it. And I've known of couples who broke up, people losing their jobs because it's so stressful that they can't feel they can talk to people about it. So that's what my show is. It's kind of like a safe haven. So people that want to talk about their experiences know that they're not alone, that other people have had experiences as well. So anyone who has had experiences and they don't feel like they can talk, please email me, and I'd love to have you on the show. Don't have to mention your name. It's paranormalheart13@gmail.com. We can talk about your experiences. I will not judge. You have experienced something that you cannot explain, and it helps to talk about it. So that's the premise of my show.
Awesome. And that's a great mission statement. And that's kind of what we're all about here. This is a safe space. This is where you can talk about whatever you've experienced and not be ridiculed or made fun of, or people rolling their eyes or shaking their heads. Because I know even with some of my own experiences, I barely believed it. And if it hadn't happened to me, I probably wouldn't have. But then I found that the more you experience things like that, the more it opens your eyes. And I've had people tell me stories from my books and things that you kind of wonder, like, I don't know. But again, I just try to take it at face value. I don't vet the stories. I retell them as they were told to me. Mm-hmm. And it is what it is. And I know in a lot of cases, the people that told me their stories, they had absolutely nothing to gain. They didn't want any attention. They weren't trying to sell you anything. And they were reticent, to talk about it. I mean, some people, you had to drag it out of them with a log chain to finally get them to talk. But it's interesting. And I find just about everybody, even people that say they don't believe in the paranormal or they don't believe in ghosts or whatever, if they think hard enough, they've had some kind of experience. And there's no cultural boundary there either. I've traveled throughout the world. I met people in Southeast Asia that had stories, people in the UK and Spain, even in Morocco. When I was there, it's across all religions, everything. Everybody has some sort of paranormal experience in their life, or they know somebody that does. I'm sorry, Kat, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. That's what fascinates me about the paranormal. It doesn't matter if it's ghosts or cryptids or aliens or what it is, but every culture around the world have had some stories in their history. Everyone have had these experiences, and to me, that's extremely fascinating. And how can you not be fascinated by that?
Absolutely. And it's the same not only with ghosts and spirits and things like that, but with Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. You've got Bigfoot, you've got Sasquatch, you've got the Yeti, you've got the abominable snowman, again, it's across all cultural boundaries. Same with UFOs. Goes back to even biblical times when they saw unexplained things in the sky. So it's very interesting. Charles Fort once said, "One measures a circle beginning anywhere." So that's always been my thing with the paranormal. There is no right or wrong way to approach it. It is what it is. And Cisco and I talk about this a lot. She's got the onion theory that paranormal is like an onion. Every time you peel off a layer, there's another layer there. There are no answers, only more questions, which that to me, that's the fun is in the chase. If I had answers to everything, then, what would I care? It's just studying these things and listening to these stories that continues that fascination. Started at a very young age for me, around 5 years old. I had my first paranormal experience, and that just started me on my journey. And I'm still here. So my birthday's on Halloween. I'll be 56 years old.
Awesome.
So I've got a half a century here that I've been into the paranormal, and said I don't have any answers and have a lot more questions than I started with. But again, the thrill is in the hunt. I know you've had some really spectacular guests on there, including myself.
Yes.
But Cisco and I have been on their show. You've been on our show. Now you're here with us. But one of the big ones, you mentioned Dark Waters. He's a big fan of the show. Everybody loves him here. But you had a really big catch recently. You had Dixie Cryptid on your show. I don't know if everybody in the chat is familiar with him. What was your experience with Dixie Cryptid? He seems like a real character.
Oh, Cam is such a sweetheart. Down to earth, easy to talk to. I started out as a fan of his show and messaged him because my husband actually found his show first. And I said, "Oh, what are you listening to?" And he said, "Oh, it's a show on YouTube, Dixie Cryptid." I started listening too, and thought, "Wow, this is a great guy. Love his voice, love the accent." And messaged him and said, "Hey, my name's Kat Ward." Told him how much I love his show, and told him I had a podcast if he's ever had any experiences, and he did with UFOs. So I went from a fan to having friendship with him. We chat quite a few times a week. He's such a great guy, and like I said, he's down to earth. Has such a great show, and he's so supportive. And if there's anything I can do to help you, Kat, let me know. And so Cam, if you're listening, how you doing, love?
Oh, that's great. And I love the para-unity. I know sometimes some of the ghost groups and the investigator groups kind of get in a little infighting and stuff there, but I like seeing the unity, and that's what we have here with Dezombified and the Z Horde. We're all one big happy family, and especially you get us in the Discord where everybody kind of let their hair down. We try to keep it family friendly here on YouTube, but we got a great bunch of people here. Everybody's got everybody's back, and I love to see that kind of support and things. It's just, everything else in the world is kind of messed up and haywire and upside down right now, but here, people got their stuff together.
Yeah, I've had nothing but good experiences since I've been doing my podcast, because there's lots of drama in the paranormal world, and I was a little leery in the beginning, but I've had nothing but support and love and great friendships from so many people. And it doesn't matter if you're a seasoned podcaster or it's almost 2 years that I've been doing my show now. So right from day one, I've had so many people, hey, if I can help you out, here's some tips that I wish I would have been told in the beginning. And it's so wonderful to have the support from everybody. It's amazing.
Good deal. I want to take just a minute here, welcome some newcomers that have just come in. We have got, let me scroll back up here. Nefarious TV is in the house. Good morning, Nefarious. How are you doing today? I've got a very special guest in the chat this morning. Jim Malliard is here. I don't know if you guys know Jim or not, but he has got an awesome show called The Mallard Report. He covers all aspects of the paranormal, and he is a real stand-up guy.
Nice.
And thanks for subscribing to Dezombified there, Jim. We appreciate you. Maybe we can get you on here sometime. Kat, another group that you're closely affiliated with, guys that I absolutely love, and they've asked me to be on the show, and I think you're going to be on there too coming up soon. That's the People Under the Stairs podcast. Tell us about those guys.
Oh, these guys are awesome. So I had a message on Twitter a few months ago from Stan Wanglund, and saying that he liked the show. So I started following him on Twitter, and that's another podcaster that we became friends. And he has a co-host, Paul. They talk about paranormal in any aspect. And Stan is actually a clinical psychologist. So I found that fascinating, that a psychologist into the paranormal. So he has a little bit of a different point of view, in my opinion, when it comes to the paranormal, because he studied parapsychology as well. So they wanted to have me on as a guest, which I was. And normally it's a half-hour show, and I was on there for an hour. It was so nice talking to these guys. It was like sitting in the living room, having a beer, just chatting about the paranormal. Very easy to talk to. And then they said they loved me, and Paul was actually on vacation this week. So Stan messaged me and said, hey, do you want to co-host while Paul's away this week? I thought, yeah, sure, let's do that. So it was on, I think it was released this Monday past. And again, a half-hour show turned into an hour. We could have gone like 4 more hours. Such a blast, such a great show. People under the stairs. Stan and Paul, they're amazing people.
Yeah, and Stan is a character. He messages me back and forth a lot on Twitter and Facebook, and I was surprised. I mean, just almost shocked at the pedigree the man has. He is very intelligent, but he's very well spoken. And despite being intelligent, he still has that almost a childlike sense of wonder when it comes to everything in the paranormal. I mean that in a nice way, where he doesn't judge. He's fascinated by it.
And a great sense of humor too.
Oh yeah, he's a card. But I'm looking forward to that. Maybe we can have him on sometime. But that's another great show. Also notice we've got PA Nightmares in the chat. Hey there, brother. How you doing? Hope everything's going good. Anybody else here? Don't think we've missed anybody. So, Kat, in your experience, has having a paranormal podcast, has it broadened your horizons? Do you find things that you maybe didn't believe so much in that you believe more in them now, or were you always a believer?
I was always a believer, but when I first started my podcast, I just wanted to have ghosts. But then I realized paranormal's not just ghosts, it's cryptids as well. And like I said earlier, UFOs, aliens, anything that's weird. So now I like to have guests to talk about every aspect of the paranormal. Bigfoot, I already knew a little bit about because it's a very popular cryptid, but I didn't really know a whole lot. So after listening to a lot of these podcasts and listening to people's experiences, I'm glad I haven't encountered one, to be honest. I'll stick to the ghost, thanks, because I will investigate those, but the Bigfoot, I don't know. That's a little...
Still waiting dangerous. For my first Bigfoot encounter, face-to-face, a sighting. And where I live here in the Pacific Northwest, I mean, this is Bigfoot country. I can go right across the river into Washington State and over near either Mount Rainier or other areas there in the Gifford Pinchot National Forest. They've had a lot of current sightings there. I've been up there a few times. I found a weird little town up there called Yakult, which is actually a Native American word for Valley of the Fire Demon. But it was like when I first went into this little town, something didn't feel right. Something didn't feel off or felt off. And the person I was with, I'm like, this place is strange. Do you know anything about this? And she didn't. And it was far enough out that I couldn't get any cell service. So when I got back into range, I looked it up, and it's had all these strange things happen to it, like people being chased by 2-foot-tall Native American braves. A little girl on her way home from school was chased. They've had a lot of mysterious fires. There was, back in the 1800s, there was a big fire that called the Occult Burn that swept through there and wiped everything out. And there's a ghost light there. There's a steam train, a phantom steam train that they see coming through. And at one time, I think it's back in the 1800s, a bunch of the children from town were missing. And I had a strange experience there. There was a little restaurant called the Whistle Stop Cafe that was right across from the train depot. Went in there and I ordered some food. I'd gone to the restroom, was washing my hands, and just as I started to come out, I flipped the light switch off just as I grabbed the door handle. Well, when I did, the door wouldn't open. It wouldn't budge. It wasn't locked. I could turn the handle, but the door just wouldn't open. and I could hear kids like on the other side of the door. And I thought, okay, there's some kids here. They're having fun with me. Well, all of a sudden, the next pull, the door swings wide open. There's nobody anywhere. And I actually talked to the proprietor, the lady that owned the restaurant, and she said that that's very common there, that they hear children laughing, playing, running up and down the back stairs in the restaurant when there's nothing there. So I'm looking into that. But getting back to Bigfoot, yeah, I've had, I don't really even want to call it an encounter, but I've heard the yips and the yowls and the tree knocks. Once when I was in Jefferson National Forest up in Virginia, I was pelted with rocks. And nobody around in the middle of the forest. I was off trail, and these were like smooth river rocks in the middle of the woods. And I noticed that when they hit me, it's like I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel a rock hit me. And instead of coming in on an arc or parabola like somebody had lobbed a stone at me, they were coming in a straight line out of the woods. And the only reason I knew they were hitting me was when I heard them hitting the ground. And I picked them up, and there were a couple of them, and they were warm to the touch. I think I've talked to people about that, and they said, yeah, that was a Bigfoot telling you need to go away, go the other direction.
Yeah.
So
at least they were just little pebbles and not boulders.
Yeah. When they start tossing boulders, it's, you have encounters like that. There's another story from this area, the Ape Canyon, if you've ever heard that one, where a bunch of miners back in the 1920s were trapped in a cabin, and like a whole slew of Bigfoot kept them in there for days, and pounded on the walls and tried to break into the cabin and tossed boulders and really scared these guys. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, this area here, there's about an hour away from where I am in the Ottawa Valley in Ontario. We have a huge national park called the Algonquin Park, and there have been sightings there of Bigfoot. So yeah, we have them all across Canada too.
Cool. I've never spent a lot of time in Canada. I've been there, but I was in the city. I spent about 3 months in Ottawa back in the 80s, but I was around the Parliament area and Carleton Place and that area. Even considered going to Carleton University for a while, but
nice.
Ended up staying where I was. We got a break coming up here. I want you to stay with us, Kat. When we come back, you've got a personal encounter I'd like you to relate to.
I do.
Chat this morning. Okay. Yeah, thanks everybody. Okay, coming up here. All rise for the Z Horde anthem. Get up and shake your zombie booties this morning. Like I said last time, I got a lot of laughs, and I pulled a line from Outkast there and said, shake it like a Polaroid picture. So here's the Z Horde anthem, folks.
This one goes out to all you Dezomba friends, the Z Horde. We want you to know just how much we love you.
Shout out to Ophelia Noctis, creepy clown girl, dark carnival got this. A local nightmare, it's so amazing. Puerto Rican Jose's entertaining. Dark waters, dog man is twisted. Asia 1994, really gifted. Dustin Flemings, stronger than the rock. Hellfire's out here making everything hot. Yeah, Braden 23 of fire's a G. We're kryptonites down, kid, he's family. Now there are times when we all need gore. Danny Martians in the house, never know what's in store. Mandy Mortem is legit and a queen. Gothic Rose enchanting, she's on the scene. 13 past midnight, things that go bump in the night. Gory B, horror addicts are out of sight. Big ups to the late horror show. Emily's Adventures in Horrorland, here we go. And you know we gotta keep them dice rolling. MD Who Entertainment, she's been chosen. Give it up for the evil outcast. Swedish mom is dope, yo, you know she got class. So if you get bad vibes from storytelling, then these monsters in my mind will leave you yelling. You see, we all about hearing stranger stories on the creeps. So sweet, she really got love for me. Penny tails up, narrating for the win. Queenie Todd, they amazing, but real dark and grim. Dementor centaurs, flickathon, swamp dwellers. Scolded 22, they be our fellas. Anime Atome, time he lives. A fantastic panic, deep paranormal history. Great graphics, What's up, Bullet Greedy? Yeah, I meant CP. I'm gonna get so bent with nefarious TV. Slumberies are the morbid. Cap 7, truly salmon. And we can never forget about Karen. 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 Karen.
All right, folks. Hope you enjoyed the anthem there. Just a little way of giving back to the Z Horde family. We've got people's names in there that friends and part of the family. Yeah, my name's even in there. Take a look here and check out this awesome merchandise here. Z Horde and Stereo Dread. You need a cup? We got cups for you. Got my birthday coming up on Halloween. You want to know what to get me? There you go. You can order me a Z Horde mug. These mugs are awesome. It really helps out the show. They could even make you a custom mug like that pink one there in the middle, Creepy Clown Girl on there. That's a one of a kind. But as you see there, you can put your hamster in it. You can keep your toothpaste there. You can even keep Seymour, your flesh-eating plant, in there till he outgrows it. But those are really nice mugs. Don't forget, also, PayPal. Any way you can support the stream, even if it's just being a listener, we appreciate that. But your financial support, either through the merch or through a PayPal donation, goes a long way. And every penny goes back into the show. They're constantly upgrading the equipment and the software and things to bring everybody a top-notch show. And they're doing a great job. Get some hands in the chat there for Dezombified. And just like I said, if you can't donate, that's cool too. We understand, but you can support us by hitting that like button, subscribing if you're not already, share across all your social medias, your Twitter, your Facebook, your Instagram, MeWe, whatever you're on. Shout out to Dezombified. The more, the merrier. All right. Now, before we get back to Kat and her personal encounter, got a little news item I found that I thought y'all might enjoy. So, this was in. I know we've got some Pennsylvania people in the chat this morning. When a Pennywise clown doll, mysteriously appears in a woman's backyard, cops told her to burn it. This is in the. Oh, I'm sorry, this wasn't Pennsylvania. This was New Jersey. Different article I was thinking of. Harrington Park, New Jersey. There's a picture of it there. It's some kind of stuffed doll from the new It movie. And it's got some kind of weird writing on the top of it. I've spent most of the morning trying to decipher that. And at first I thought it was numbers, but then you look at it as some kind of symbols. It's not any rune or anything that I recognize. And the way the lady describes her property there's not anything around there. There's no kids around anywhere. But she found this face down in her backyard. And cops told her to destroy it, and she did. Second picture there, they're burning it in a fire pit. Maybe this is some kind of viral marketing thing for the movie that I haven't heard of. Now, wouldn't that be a great way to generate buzz, is to go through towns and throw Pennywise dolls in people's backyards and then just kind of let it snowball from there. Personally, though, if I found one in my backyard, I'd probably keep it. I'd put it on my mantle or something. Maybe it's haunted. But yeah, no idea how they ended up there. If anybody can decipher what's written across the top of the clown's head there, let me know. I'd love to know what that's all about. It looks like a stylized date or some kind of weird, maybe it's gang graffiti, who knows. But anyway, I just thought I would share that with y'all this morning. I like to peer through the news. Yeah, maybe Juggalos did it. The ICP, the Insane Clown Posse, decided to spread the love. Okay. Now then, we're ready to bring Kat back in. Are you still with us, Kat?
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
All right. Yeah, I can
Awesome.
hear you fine. Good deal. Now then, somebody's saying in the chat that Nina Love saying she hates dolls. So that is kind of creepy, you got to admit. Have you ever had anything like that happen to you, Kat? You ever had a mysterious doll or a haunted doll show up, or somebody put something weird in your yard?
No, thankfully.
Okay. But you have had an interesting encounter that you were telling me about.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to put up a background here. While we're doing that, let me check the roll call real quick and see who else is in the chat. Creepy Clown Girl. Hey, girl guy, glad you could join us this morning. And I think I'm caught up. If there's anybody else in the chat, Nina Love, I don't know if I said hi to you or not. Glad you could be here. She's a really great friend. So it looks like we're caught up there. Well, while we're putting up this slide for set the mood here for your story, Kat, just a moment here.
While you're doing that, I just want to say that my birthday happens to be National Paranormal Day. How perfect is that?
Oh, that is awesome. That is awesome. You couldn't ask for a better day. Jim says he's got a story with a kid's toy for another day, so I have to have Jim on to tell his story. I've had a couple things like that. I had a toy cell phone that didn't have any batteries in it that actually started ringing during a thunderstorm one time. I thought that was kind of odd.
We actually encountered during the team's investigation. The team that I'm with is called Canadian Supernatural Research Society, and we were doing an investigation one time, and one toy went off, and when one of the members picked it up, there's no batteries in it. And we're like, okay.
Amazing. I've heard stories of Furbies doing that too. I heard a guy who had put his Furby in his closet and had been in there for a couple of years, and he heard it chattering one morning. He opened the door, it's sitting in there, took it out. He's like, how are those batteries still good? Opened it up, there weren't any batteries in it. So I was always kind of weirded out by Furbies anyway. So it doesn't surprise me that they speak their own language and whatnot. Okay. I can't see the screen. Do we have the creepy background up there yet? Let's go. Okay, there we go. That's what I was waiting on. All right, Kat has had an experience with the Hat Man. All right, Kat, give us the details.
Sure. I grew up on the east coast of Canada. The province that I'm from is New Brunswick. And the little community that I'm from is called Dieppe, Dieppe. And when I was about 5 to 12 years old, my parents and I lived on the top floor of a 3-story apartment building. It was a very, very old building. They used to be heated by coal. There was a coal furnace in the basement. But by the time we moved in, they had switched it over to electric heat. But you know it's old when it's heated when it used to be heated by coal. But that building always had a creepy feeling, especially my room. And I had a big walk-in closet. And my dad, to this day, still says he remembers me screaming in the middle of the night, talking about the man in my closet, the man in my closet. I used to see the Hat Man, but the one that I used to see was 4 feet tall. Now, I can say 4 feet tall because I remember I was comparing it to the size of the dressers that I had in my room. So if you're familiar with the Hat Man at all, he's generally tall and slim. This one was kind of short, but he had that famous hat, and I don't know if it was a trench coat or a cape that he was wearing. I saw no features. It was just like looking at a shadow, but I saw him several times in my room. I remember one time my father had me in the closet and he's saying, okay, look, there's nothing here in the daytime or in the nighttime that's not here during the daytime. He was trying to comfort me. That didn't work because I looked at him and said, you mean he's here in the daytime too? And apparently I was afraid of the daytime in my room for the longest time as well. So that kind of backfired on him. But for many years, I used to encounter him, mention it to my friends a couple of times, but I was kind of known as the girl the weird girl that liked ghosts. So no one ever believed me. So I stopped talking about it. And then years later, after we moved away from the apartment building, parents bought a house, never saw him again, but he's always been in my mind. I've always wondered, what is he? Why is he there? Who is he? He never took notice of me, but he was scared to be Jesus of me every time I saw him. And then years later, as an adult, I was listening to Paratooth Radio, It's a paranormal podcast, and they had a guest on there talking about Hat Man, and I thought, oh my, I've never heard of anyone else encountering the Hat Man before. So I had messaged the host, one of the hosts, Justin Cancelleri, and said, hey, I had an encounter with the Hat Man as well, but mine was 4 feet tall. So he says, oh, you need to watch this video. He sent me a link on YouTube. There's this gentleman who also saw the shorter version, and he wanted to reenact what he saw as a youth. And I had all those feelings come back as a childhood, where I was terrified. As soon as I saw it, I said, that's him. That's exactly what I saw. So listening to other shows and listening to other people's encounters made me realize I'm not alone. I thought I was the only one, but to hear that other people have encountered this thing, it's just amazing. So this is why I like to talk about my encounter with the Hat Man, because there's probably others out there who have had encounters of their own, and they don't want to say anything to anyone, and it's probably eating them up inside, kind of like what it did with me. But knowing that you're not alone. But he never tried to hurt me, because you've heard of the tall Hat Man lunging for children. Some of them said they had red eyes. Mine didn't have that. I didn't see any features. He just never paid attention to me, which I was really thankful for. Later on, I was talking to a psychic medium, and she thought perhaps that particular Hat Man was there to protect me. Because it was one night I had my arm hanging over the side of the bed, and my arm started to burn, and screamed from my parents, which was almost a nightly thing. And they came over to me, and I said my arm hurt. So when they turned the light on, I had scratches on my arm. That only happened the one time, thankfully. So I don't remember how many scratches were on my arm. I just remember I had scratches. So somebody, that psychic medium, had told me that, no, the Hat Man was there to protect you, and it kept away whatever it was that tried to hurt you that night. So in a way, I'd like to thank him, but I kind of don't want to see him again either. But yeah, just the shorter version doesn't seem to be as he's not as popular as the tall version. So have you heard of the short one before?
I have. Yours is the most detailed encounter that I've heard, but I've heard of the taller ones, the shorter ones. I heard of one that was even smaller, that was like 1.5 foot. To me, that would be more frightening. I mean, something that's big, yeah, okay, I'm going to be afraid of that. But something that's little and running around under the furniture and stuff, it's like, oh, no. And
I can get into anywheres.
Yeah, that's a great story, by the way. And I don't know what it is about closets. I've heard so many creepy stories.
I know.
And I guess when you're a kid, as if it's open. When I was a kid, the closet had to be either all the way open or all the way shut. If it's open just a crack, there's something in there watching you.
Yeah.
But, I read an encounter not too long ago where a little girl kept seeing a man in her closet, and she would talk to him, and the parents kept saying, who are you talking to? And she's like, oh, I'm talking to the man in the closet. And she described the guy and everything to him. They thought, an imaginary friend or whatever. Well, they were talking to their neighbor at some point, and the neighbor sort of relayed a story to them that before they had bought the house, there was an elderly man that lived there. After his wife passed away, he just couldn't handle the grief, and had hung himself in the closet in the little girl's bedroom.
Oh.
So that gives me goosebumps now.
No kidding.
But yeah, it's and same like with the bed. There's always stuff under the bed. You got to keep your feet and arms inside the bed under the covers, because there's something under there that'll get you if not.
To this day, I don't sleep with any arms or legs dangling over the bed.
Same. And somebody said, I think it was Madam Doctor Who, talking about a story that she had a doll that she always slept with. And one night it slipped out of her hand and went over the edge of the bed, between the bed and the wall, and absolutely disappeared. They never found it. She never saw it at all again. Even her dad came in and took all the bedding and everything off. It was just gone. So I love creepy stories like that, especially with a doll. But yeah, a tiny Hat Man, even a 4 foot tall one, to me, that's scarier than a bigger one, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
And similar, like the grinning man, I've heard that one. I have one of those stories in my book of a girl that encountered the grinning man, and he was very much like the Hat Man, except he had this wide grin. And when I was in the Philippines, they talk about they have a similar beastie there called Cockray, which is a man with a hat, and he likes to live in mango groves, and he smokes a pipe and hangs out in the trees, and that's something they tell their kids probably to keep them in after dark, but they're very serious about it. I mean, it was like a Hat Man legend. It wasn't told jokingly. There's people that believe in it. So interesting. And it's like you were saying, there's all these things. You get into it, delve into it. There's things like the Hat Man and the Grinning Man and even Slender Man, which supposedly started out as a creepypasta, but then there have been sightings in real life, and it sort of puts me in mind of a tulpa or something like that, where enough people concentrate on it that maybe you can create a thought form. Yeah, it's like the gentleman's name that escapes me right now, but he wrote the shadow stories that were popular in the pulp magazines and on the radio back in the 20s and 30s. And it actually got to the point where guests in his home would see the image or the shadow of Lamont Cranston, which was the Shadow's real name, man with a slouch hat and a scarf and a big trench coat. And it's been put forth that maybe the author spent so much time, because he wrote hundreds of these stories for both the pulps and the radio, that he put so much effort and emotion into that character that the character actually came to be. Because he would have dinner parties sometimes, and people would report seeing the shadow up on the balcony there. So it's interesting.
Very interesting.
And just wanted to give a shout out here. Notice we've got a couple people come in. We got Timey Lives with us this morning. How are you, Timey? She's an awesome supporter of this. Lives. I'm sorry, I misspoke there. I never know which way I say. Timey Lives. I'll know it next time. And there was somebody else. Timey has a stream that you guys need to check out. The little the morning coffee, I think is what she calls it. She's a cancer survivor and a great all-around lady. She's very up and very, you can't be depressed if you're listening to one of her streams. She brings out the fun and the absolute best. Tales from the Hanged Man, that's the other one I was looking for. He's a great friend of mine from the UK. He's got an awesome YouTube channel. Some really good stories of the darker sides of the British Isles there. The Hanged Man is a fictional pub, and these are stories from that pub that he likes to talk about. A lot of myths, legend, and more on the folk horror side. So if you enjoy folk horror and that sort of thing, definitely check out Tales from the Hanged Man.
I'm going to check that out.
Oh yeah, it's definitely worth a listen. See anybody else? I think we're caught up here. You're welcome, Timey. And 6. Okay. Oh, just want to shout out on the Cusp Tarot. Just subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. Met you in the stream the other night. I was telling them about how I used to collect tarot cards and had several hundred decks at one time, over 100 anyway. Down to about 30 now, but I love the artwork on those. Now, what's your experience with that type thing, Kat? Now, I don't know if you know my backstory, but my grandmother on my mother's side was a self-proclaimed gypsy witch. And one of the things that she liked to do was tell fortunes and practice different types of divination. She didn't like tarot cards. She liked the Gypsy Witch deck, which is like regular playing cards, but with little pictures on them. I actually got her original deck. Kind of similar to the Lenormand cards, if you're those. And, okay, seems like there was a glitch in the audio there, but we're back now. I was saying my grandma was a gypsy witch, and she could read tea leaves, coffee grounds, the entrails of animals. I kid you not.
Wow.
And she would do that to when they slaughtered animals. This was a working farm that had they raised their own beef and pork, and in addition to having milk cows. But when they slaughtered hogs, she would study the entrails of whatever hog she picked, and that's how she would predict the future growing season there, and she must have been spot on because they were successful farmers. They trucked farm as well as having the dairy farm. But what is your experience with tarot cards or pendulums or crystal dowsing or any of those things? Do you have any interest in that or any?
I've never really had any experiences with those. I used to see a psychic back in my hometown. She would use a crystal ball, which I found I couldn't drive after having a crystal ball reading. I was so energized that I was shaking. So whenever I went for a reading, I had to have a friend take me. And the psychic told me, this is before I really got heavily into the paranormal. It was more of an interest. And she says, yeah, you're picking up on the energy. She says, you have to learn how to block that. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. But yeah, it was just the amazing amount of energy that I would pick up from the crystal ball. She would use tea leaves, which was pretty cool. And at first I used to think that people would manipulate, because sometimes it'd be like a big heart at the bottom of the cup or a person, the letter of a person's name. And I used to think, well, they're manipulating to try and get that shape at the bottom of the cup. But her readings were so accurate. She definitely had a talent. But no, I haven't had personal experiences with any of those. And I've never ever actually seen a dowsing rod. I would love to see one.
Yeah, I've used dowsing rods before and on paranormal investigations that I've gone on, and I had a custom pair that I made myself. I had copper tubes to hold the rods, and then I used brass brazing rods for the actual rod part, and it's interesting. My father was what they call a water witch or a water dowser, and he could use anything. It worked better with a willow, what he called a willow wand, which was a forked willow branch. But in a pinch, I've seen him use 2 wire coat hangers and go out and like he'd walk around, the wires would cross. He's like, okay, this is where the water main is. The pipe is fascinating, and just don't know how it works. There's people that claims that it doesn't work, but I've actually seen it. We were at a friend's house one time. They were doing some work on the plumbing, going to have to dig up the water main, and my dad helped locate it. So maybe just that kind of if you have that connection, because if everything I believe is connected. If you looked at string theory and some of that stuff, and even like in the Carillion photography where they take a picture of a person or a leaf or something like that, you can see the aura of energy that's outlined around that. And in some of the Carillion photography, they'll take like a leaf and cut it in half and then take a picture of it. And in the picture, you can still see the full outline of the leaf in the electrical magnetic sense, which is amazing. And I also saw somebody that had some fingers amputated. They took a picture of his hand. You could still see where the fingers were, even though they were gone. So there's all kinds of things out there that we haven't discovered or don't know about or don't fully understand. And I love that kind of research.
Yeah.
And the University of North Carolina has done a lot of research into the paranormal and parapsychology. Some things work and sometimes they don't. It's just one of those things.
I remember my mom telling me that her grandmother used to use dowsing rods all the time.
And I've done pendulum dowsing. Cisco, that's here in the chat, she has a shop where she makes really neat wired jewelry.
Oh, she's talented.
So wickedly wearable art. I think I got that right. You can find her on Facebook. But she also makes pendulums with crystal to douse with. And I've got a personal one that she sent me, and it's amazing. I've done some things like, think of it as a Ouija board that can only answer a couple of directions. This north and south for yes, east and west for no, or in a circle for I don't know, or kind of sounds like a magic 8-ball, but it works. And I've known people that use them for like map dowsing and things.
Yes, I've heard of that too.
A guy that I knew out in Bakersfield, California, that worked in the oil industry, and he would actually map douse to find places where there were oil deposits. And he would get out a plat map that he got from wherever, go over it with a pendulum, and darn if he wouldn't be able to locate pockets of oil, which I thought that was just remarkable.
Saves a lot of time.
Yeah, and I know that there's a lot of people with psychic inclinations that'll also do the map dowsing locate missing people sometimes, especially if they can get an object that belonged to that person. They'll tie that to a string and move it over there. But yeah, the pendulum, I said I play with that sometimes. But if you're in the market for a pendulum, check out Cisco on Facebook.
Yeah, Cisco's very talented with her jewelry.
And I'm happy that she's coming back. She had some family issues. Her husband got in an accident and hadn't been able to get around. She's been taking care of him, but she's getting ready to start back up and start her podcast over. So we think Kat and I have both been on that show, and then Cisco and I have been on Kat's show. We all know one another and swap episodes there, but Cisco's got a great podcast. We'll have to have her on sometime. I've just been waiting till a point where she can join us, and then we'll have her as a guest sometime.
Yeah, she's been a very busy lady.
If there's anybody new in the chat, I was thinking I saw somebody while we were talking. Spooky Boo's Scary Story Time. Glad to have you in the house, Spooky Boo. I just want to mention, coming up after this show, I believe it starts at 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern. We're going to have Philia Noctis and Evil Outcast. Be sure and tune in for that. And then tonight, 9 p.m., got the Lizard Queen. Looking forward to that. And if y'all joined us last night, Queenie Todd was on, and she is awesome. That lady is something else. Had a great time in the chat. If you missed it, you can always go back and watch the playback. Once it's posted on the channel there. Very, very interesting. And somebody said in the chat, so like they read entrails. Like that's a very, very old thing. I think that went back to like medieval times even, where I know the Romans did it, and also the I think it was the Vikings would they didn't slaughter the animal just for that purpose, but when they were butchering something to eat, they would study the entrails and somehow predict the future off that. So that is a thing, and not just making that up, even though sometimes it sounds like it. My grandma was a pistol. She knew all kinds of things like that. And I was thinking about that. A lot of times in paranormal, there seems to be a maternal connection, and that's no insult to fathers or grandfathers, but I find a lot of times when people that are into the paranormal, a lot of that either comes from their mother, or in most cases more so their grandmother. I know Cisco and I have talked about that. She had a very strange connection with her grandma, and an experience that I'll let her talk about when she's on. What about you, Kat? Did other people in your family have an interest in the paranormal, or did anywhere that came from, a mother or grandmother or even a male family member?
Yep, I have a couple of cousins who are really into that. And my mother used to be able to communicate. We used to talk to her grandfather, and he would even have to be in the same house. And when she thought that was normal. So when she would tell people that, she's talking to her grandfather, they're like, what are you talking about? Then she realized, oh, others can't do this either. So she would stop talking about it. But when her grandfather passed, he was in the hospital, and he went and woke her up to say goodbye and that he was fine. So she went and woke up her parents to say, grandfather died. And like, what are you talking about? The phone, like, he's in the hospital. He's fine. Go back to sleep. Then the phone rang. It was the hospital to say that he had passed. And they just looked at my mother like, okay. But it's on both sides of the family. There are gypsies on my father's side, way, way back. I don't know any of my family that far back, sadly. But it's just, it seems to be mainly women. I don't know if that's because we open up more and talk more about it, and men just don't talk about it, or if it really is just women who mainly have the abilities. But that's really fascinating. And something else I find intriguing too. I call myself a sensitive. I get weather migraines, and I found that there seems to be a correlation with migraines and people who are sensitive.
Yep, absolutely. I'm the same way. I'm somewhat empathic. I get migraines either before a really intense storm, and I've had them before earthquakes too.
Oh, interesting.
I can tell when something's going to happen. I don't always know what it is, but I've had those precognitions like you were talking about there. And I remember once, a very tragic thing. I was still living with my parents at the time. I'd falling asleep on the couch, and I dreamed I was at the funeral home, and I could just, hear those low murmurs of conversation. And I thought, I wonder who's dead. And about that time, the phone rang and woke me up. My mom answered it and then just immediately broke down. It turned out it was one of her, I think it was one of her sister-in-laws was calling to tell her that one of her brother's children had perished in a fire. But it was just, that I didn't know who or what, but I knew somebody was dead. And you hear about that a lot of times. And that makes me think that maybe somewhere in our humanness, we had that connection. Because you think about eons ago when you didn't have the internet and you didn't have a telephone and you didn't have any way to communicate with people, that maybe there was a way that we used to communicate over long distances. And then it's just kind of been farmed out of us, with all the technology and advances and things. And like anything, you don't use it, you lose it. So humans may have had some strange ability, and I think some people maybe still have that, and that could account for where those connections come from and things. And getting back to the female connection there, Tales from the Hangman was making an interesting point there. He said that was very popular in Norse mythology, in their tradition. And it goes back, to the crone, the wise woman, the mother nature, if you will. So that's very, very interesting.
I just saw Sean mention about infrasound. I've been doing a little bit of research on it, and earthquakes, storms, that's why animals can tell you before that we realize what's going on. They're detecting infrasound, which is sound which is 20 hertz or below. It's sound that we can't hear. And I won't go in. There's so much to talk about. I won't go into it too much. But the human eye and the ear resonate at about 20 hertz. So when you have something resonating at that frequency, we pick up things. And I think there's a correlation between people with weather headaches being sensitive. I think we're picking up on infrasound.
Yeah, that's. Okay, that's very fascinating, very heady stuff there. I'll have to look into that, but I've known about the thing about animals being able to predict floods or earthquakes, or read a story about a hunter that was up in a tree and saw like just a forest full of animals, like a river of animals. For instance, in one of my books, just saw all these animals running through the woods, and I think there was something going on the other end of it. Well, Kat, it's been a pleasure having you with us today. I know you've got to go. You've got an appointment later.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and bring in Dezombified and let them say hi to everybody, Kenny, Dreadful, and Miss Stereo, and then we'll see Kat off. It's great. I hope you'll come back someday, and we can continue. An hour goes by so fast.
Oh, it does.
I could easily sit here and do 2 or 3 more. And Cisco and I have done that. She's mentioning a story in the chat there that I'll have to tell another time about a recurring dream that I kept having about a guy that had been about 25 feet long. So I don't know about you, but I don't want to go swimming in any water where there's something big enough in there that can eat me. But I would love to see some sort of lake monster here. But there's other places. You got Ogopogo. You've got different areas throughout the country and throughout the world where there are things that live in lakes. Now, one of the explanations I've heard for Loch Ness, which is kind of creepy, is a British black magician, Aleister Crowley, had a manor there on the shores of Loch Ness called Boleskine. And it's infamous. Jimmy Page bought it later on, and then I think it burned down eventually. But there were people, locals, that claimed that whatever Crowley was up to in Boleskine Manor, that it would be dark inside the house even during the daytime. So maybe he conjured forth something that through some kind of rift with the strange workings that he was doing there, and who knows. But anyway, something fascinating to think about. a few more minutes here. I think I've got time. I'd like to touch on something else we were talking about there. We're talking about the maternal connection. And then in the book that I co-wrote with Cisco, and it's actually her book. She made me come along for the ride when I insisted she put her stories in a book. The title is We're All Children in the Wilderness of the Afterlife, a guided tour through a haunted life. And she told her stories, and then I would follow along behind her and kind of do a little color commentary, if you will. And I don't have a link for that, but you can find it on Amazon. Cisco, if you're still in the chat, could you? Well, she won't be able to because she's not a mod. But mods, if you could, Creepy Clown Girl, hopefully be on it here. It's Cisco Murdoch, Murdoch, and it's on Amazon, and you can find it either under her name or my name. But she has a story in there about her connection to paranormal through her grandmother. And I'm not going to read her story, but I'm going to read my comments on it because it goes back to what we were talking about. And so, like it or not, there seems to be some maternal connection with the paranormal. No insult intended to fathers or grandfathers, but the majority of strange tales that I've collected will have a connection to a mother or grandmother somewhere in the tale, if only in the background. It perhaps harkens back to the old crone of folklore, the wise old woman who was best to be listened to and not crossed. But while my own mother played a huge part in my development in the application of all things, or appreciation of all things bizarre, it was her mother, my grandmother, that truly taught me in the ways of the strange and unusual. Like I said, she was a self-proclaimed gypsy witch. She liked to corner me in her sewing room when we went to visit and regale me with tales of witches, ghosts, and the like. She claimed that she knew that I was different because she'd observed that I was born with a caul over my face, which is simply the afterbirth or part of the amniotic membrane that was over my face when I was born. But in her eyes, that marked me as a lucky child, supposedly possessing second sight and a myriad of other supposed gifts. In all honesty, she would scare the wits out of me during the little talks in the sewing room. She did know things about me she had no way of knowing, which is rather startling when you're a small child. Sometimes it was like she could read my mind. Yikes. She always bought my silence with little bribes, Hershey bars, or sometimes even a crisp new $1 bill, so I wouldn't spill the beans to my normal cousins about our little talks. My granny was a real pistol. She was only born about 30 years or so after the end of the Civil War, so she had a veritable lifetime of tales to tell and lessons to share. As I mentioned, she could read tea leaves or coffee grounds to tell fortunes just as easily as she could whip up a meal for a family of 10 kids, 9 boys, my mother the only girl, and a dozen farmhands or so, or piece together one of her famous butterfly quilts. Excuse me. My only regret is I wish I hadn't been so afraid of her so that I could have obtained more of her wisdom. I just turned 13 when she passed away, but would have loved to have at least had that many more years with her. Granny was a big believer in portents, signs, omens, and warnings, and quite easily the most superstitious person I've ever met. She knew all the arcane rules about what you should or shouldn't do to avoid bad luck, and heaven help you if you put a hat on the bed. In her eyes, it was no different than if you had just shot someone. The only time I ever heard of Granny coming back, was after she passed away, and she came to my mother. One morning in 2002, my mom was home alone. My dad had gone shopping, I was at work, my daughter was at school. My mom had just stepped out of the shower, wrapped a towel around herself, and opened the bathroom door to let the steam escape. As she set about getting dried off and dressed, she glanced over at the doorway, and there stood my grandmother, wearing the pink dress, pink was her favorite color, that she had been buried in. Startled, my mother naturally called out, "Mama?" But as soon as she spoke, the apparition slowly backed away from the doorway and down the hall. Shaken, my mom was sure that this was some sort of warning, despite both my dad and pastor brother trying to convince her otherwise. And when my dad passed away in September the next year, I silently thought, well, maybe that was the reason for Granny's visit. However, as fate or whatever it is would have it, my mom passed away in October of 2003 on the 20th, exactly 1 year to the day that she had had the vision of her mother. Make of it what you will. A little something to think about there. That was just, I think about that, and if I ever see my mother or my grandmother, I think I've probably got a year to get my act together. So, and another thing that was in the side of the family, a calendar would fall off the wall. Usually that would mean somebody was going to die. Now, again, that was one of Granny's superstitions, but it happened several times, happened before my grandfather passed. And right before my grandfather passed, her children were taking turns at staying with her. And the night that my mom and dad and I stayed with her, my mom heard a sound in the kitchen that sounded like the calendar falling off the wall. And sure enough, within a week, my grandmother was gone. So my workaround for that, I don't have any calendars on the wall. So that way I don't have to worry about knowing when somebody's going to die. But, little things like that, you think back, a lot of those superstitions, you wonder where that comes from. Like the covering of a mirror when somebody dies, the stopping of a clock. Now, the mirror thing, I've heard that was to keep the spirit from getting trapped in the mirror. And I think about the ramifications of that. And I think the stopping of the clock, that was just an observance of the time that the person died. But either way, there's a lot of strange funerary customs and things. In fact, go back into the Victorian era where they had funeral photography and things like that, which is just mind-blowing. The picture of a family, and what you don't realize when you're looking at it is that sometimes 2 or 3 of those people, or maybe just one, are deceased, and they've got them propped up. These funeral photographers had these little stands that they could put corpses on to sort of animate them and pose them with the family. And that was commonplace back then, but that just gives me the chills now. So hopefully got everybody taken care of here on a Freaky Friday, gave you some chills, had some fun, some laughs, told some scary stories. That's just, see if there's anybody in the chat here that I've missed. Let's see. Yeah, people talk about getting lost through the portal in the mirror. Hangman says he lives for conversations like this. Well, that's what you can expect here, buddy. We love having you here, brother. Cisco's talking about her book there. Tell them about how to find it. Let's see. What else? Hangman's got some other interesting stuff there about summoning, talking about magic and things there, but above my pay grade. I'm not sure what you're talking about there, but it sounds fascinating. I'll have to look into that. Yeah, what else? Well, again, want to thank the mods for all these wonderful links that they put in, links to shows and links to people that may need help if you're struggling with suicidal thoughts, depression, even with food or things like that. Like to take care of it. And Patrona Fox is correct me. She says that Crowley was a gray magician. Easy to say. Crowley was a gray magician and not a black magician. I stand corrected there. Yeah, it was at one time they claimed that he was the most evil man alive. I think that was what the press called him. Wickedest man alive. Yeah, I've read some of his stuff. It's just not my cup of tea, but fascinating character, and you find him all throughout rock and roll music, from Jimmy Page to the Beatles to even some of the modern bands are not necessarily Crowleyites, but there's an influence there. And it looks like everybody's taken care of. Well, folks, I've appreciated everybody showing up today for my little stream. Otherwise, I'd be talking to myself or Mulder. And like I said before, he's already heard all my stories, so I'm happy to have a attentive audience here. And tonight we got coming up, this afternoon, got another show coming up with Felia. and I already lost my mind here. I can't remember who her co-host is going to be. Well, the mods popping in the chat there. And then tonight we've got Lizard Queen coming on. So that. Really looking forward to that. Ophelia, if you're still in the chat, who is is it Evil Outcast that's going to be on? Yeah, there we go. Mia put it up there. Thank you, Mia. And that's at 2 p.m. Eastern. Evil Outcast and Ophelia Noctis. And just got word that they're going to pop the cover for Cisco's book up on the screen there. Cisco, girl, I appreciate you being here. Looking forward to getting back into the swing with you there. Glad that your husband Mario is doing well. Give him our best. She told me when it happened that Mario had broken his leg in 3 places, and I said, well, you tell Mario to stay out of those places. I don't know if he appreciates the humor there or not, but I got a laugh out of Cisco. But she's had a rough patch lately with all that's gone on. But yeah, there we go. There's the book on the screen there. We are all children in the wilderness of the afterlife, a guided tour through a haunted life. Very, very fascinating accounting of all of Cisco's true paranormal experiences, and there's some mind blowers in there. And we had met through Soraya Askath, who is the host of Where Did the Road Go on WVBR out of Ithaca, New York. And he's like, Steve, I got somebody you got to meet. So one Sunday afternoon, we'd talked a little bit on Messenger and exchanged phone numbers. And I don't remember if she called me or I called her, but we talked for, I know it was a good 3 hours. And it was like reconnecting with a friend that I hadn't seen in years. And just kind of went from there. We become fast friends. And she had been going on and telling her stories on some of the listener story shows. And I'm like, you got to write these down. You need to write a book. And finally, she's like, okay, I'm going to do it, but you're coming with me. So I finally agreed to go along behind her. And these stories are just amazing. In fact, a lot of times I had to rein myself in because I didn't want to overshadow what she had done. So it wasn't like, well, yeah, what she said, but I try to keep my comments to a minimum there. But the absolute best chapter in there, I won't give any spoilers, but the one on Gettysburg will absolutely blow your mind. If you've never been to Gettysburg or know anything about Gettysburg, that's the most haunted battlefield in the country, if not the world. And I've never known anybody that didn't have an experience there. It's that actively haunted. But her experiences at Gettysburg, that could have made a book on its own. So it's worth it just for that. Be sure and check that out. And looks like it wouldn't let us do the actual link there because of the character limits, but find it there on... excuse me. All right, looks like we're about ready to wrap it up here. Again, thanks to everybody for being here today. Enjoy Ophelia and Evil Outcast later. And then tonight, Lizard Queen. I'm really looking forward to both those shows. But and if you've got anything to share, Mia popped up the address there, Dezombified@yahoo.com. Like to hear your spooky stories, any encounters, experiences, anything you've had happen to you. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for a wonderful stream. Thanks to the best mods in the business for keeping the links up there. Everybody, you have a great weekend ahead. God bless. Much love to everybody.
Oh.